Hey there fellow developers, welcome to this comprehensive Angular unit testing course. Whether you are just getting started with unit testing or looking to sharpen your skill, you are in the right place. So my name is Shashi and today we are diving deep into the world of unit testing in Angular. Unit testing is one of the most crucial skill in web development and it helps us to ensure that our applications are reliable and free from bugs. So this course is designed to take you step by step from the basics all the way to the advanced testing techniques. So in this course we are going to cover everything you need to know about Angular unit testing. We will start with absolute basic like what is testing, why it is important, and the essential tools like Jasmine and Karma. You will learn key concepts like describe, it block, before each, before all, after each, after all, and much more. So as we progress, we will get a hands-on with the testing Angular components like services, HTTP, calls, and even directives and pipes. We will cover how to mock dependencies using spies, handle asynchronous code, and write tests that are not just effective but also maintainable and scalable. So I will list down everything that whatever I will be doing it in the description as well, so you can take a look, and if you are excited to learn this, then you can continue with this video. So by the end of this course you will be equipped with all the knowledge and skills you need to confidently write unit tests for your Angular application, and no matter how complex they are. So grab your code editor, make yourself comfortable, and let's get started on this journey to master Angular unit testing. And do not forget to hit that like button if you found this video helpful, and subscribe to stay updated with all our latest videos. Alright, so now let's dive right into it. So let's first understand that what is unit testing. So unit testing is a type of software testing where a component of the application are tested in isolation. Okay, so it is done just to verify that it is working as expected or not. It focuses mostly on the small part of your application like function, methods, or classes. And if you ask me like why testing is important in Angular apps, so you will get your answer like once you will actually do the development, because it actually ensures that your code quality is better, because unit testing will help you to catch bugs early in development process and making the code more reliable and less prone to issue in the production. If I will share my personal experience, then trust me, unit testing has really helped me to improve my documentation as well, like to serve it as a form of a documentation for my own code where I can demonstrate like how my components are expected to behave. So I would say all in all it is one of the most important thing that everyone should know when they are doing development and they are working for any big MNCs. So to do this testing right, so we might require some help, right? So for example, to develop web application, we are making use of Angular framework to do our job. So in the same way, right, we will be using some framework, and the most popular one is Jasmine. So we have Jasmine and Karma, you must have already heard. So let me tell you, they both are not same. Okay, so Jasmine is a framework which provides you structure test like you have describe, you have it block. Okay, they have some good assertion where we have this expect and all that. It basically has a rich set of matcher to validate different condition in your test cases, while on the other hand this Karma is nothing but it's a test runner which will help you to run your unit test in the real browser. So don't worry guys, if you don't know about all of them, once I will create a new project and I will start with writing the unit test cases, then everything will make sense. What is this Jasmine and what is this Karma? So to teach you guys this Angular unit testing, so I will be making use of a real project. So I'm not gonna just do addition and subtraction and just go and do the unit testing there, but I will actually demonstrate it with a real life example. So I have a project ready which is a URL shortener. Let me just tell you what this application does. So you can just put your long URL here, you click on this short URL. So what it does, it will convert it into a shorter URL with this, and you can copy this and you can paste it on any browser, and this will redirect you to the long URL what you have added there. Okay, not just that, this application also helps you to track the clicks as well. For example, I can copy this URL and I can check the total clicks for my URL. So if I put it over here, I click on track clicks. So as you can see, I have this total URL clicks are 3. Okay, so not just that, also this will help us to show the URLs as well, like how many URLs I have here. So we have a table here, we have paginations and all that thing. Okay, so this everything will be covered in this unit testing, like how I can do the unit testing for my application. Okay, so before starting with this, so first let's try to understand like what is the basic testing environment is required for us to start with this unit test. So first of all, you should have a Angular project ready. So I have it already ready with me, which is just I showed you right now. And if you have an Angular application running, then which means you have the correct node version and everything is up and running. The thing is, right, the moment you create a new Angular project, you get everything by default. Okay, so Angular team provides you the basic setup of Jasmine and Karma. I know some of you can tell me that Karma is going to be deprecated and all of that, but yeah, it's still fine, right? So we still have our Jasmine test written. The only thing will change is the runner. So the whatever the way we will write the unit test, it's still going to be the same. Only the test runner will be the different. So everything will make sense even if you are trying to run it on Jest or web test runner, but still you are gonna stick with the Jasmine way of writing the unit test. So if you want to take a look, right, so I have a new project ready. So okay, I'm using NX for my for this thing, but you can still have your Angular CLI way. Okay, so if you go in the project.json, so you will have something called as test, and you will have a command here called as ng test. Okay, but as I'm using NX, so it will be NX test for me, but you can make use of ng command to run your unit test cases. Okay, so I will be running your npm run test. So for me it is NX, so it's fine. So what it will do, right, it will help me to run my test cases. Okay, so as you can see, right, I have already 3 test cases and all of 3 are failing, which is fine. I mean, this was expected. So in Angular, right, so wherever you say anything which has a term spec, okay, spec, so that is for unit testing in Angular. So for example, we have tsconfig spec.json. So if you see spec, which means this file belongs to Angular unit test. Okay, so here you will have the basic setup of your unit testing, like what is this type, like we have this Jasmine, and here you also have included that please include this spec.ts file for doing the unit testing. Okay, so that this file qualifies for my unit test cases. So now if you go inside your application, so if I go in this app, so in this app, can you see I have this spec.ts file, which means that I have a test file with me, and if I go inside that, I see there are some bunch of code, and trust me guys, I don't want you to confuse at this point of time, so you can skip this at the moment. So we are going to take a look at what is this describe, before it, and all of that by a very simple basic example. Okay, so as you can see here, right, I have a service created here which is math.service.ts file, and inside this math service, what this service is doing, this is helping me to do addition, subtraction, multiplication, and divide. Okay, so what I want to do, right, so I want to test this service. Okay, because this add is nothing but a small unit, okay, which I want to test. So I can write a test case for this add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Okay, so to start anything in Angular with unit testing, you should have a spec file created for that file. So what I'll do, right, I want to test math.service.ts. so what I'll do, I will create a new file called as math.service.spec.ts. okay, so once you hit enter, right, so this will create a spec file for us. Okay, and now you can start writing your test cases. Before writing the test cases, let's first understand some jargons which we are going to use while writing the test cases. So the first one is nothing but something called as describe. Okay, so what is this describe? Okay, so this is nothing but a container for your test, basically, right? So if I have to create a test case for this service, so I have to create a container, right? And that container can be created with this term called as describe. Okay, and if you see this describe, right, so there is no such import happens anywhere. So this describes is a part of your Jasmine framework, and that's what Angular give us out of the box. So we can make use of this describe to create the container. Okay, and we can start writing our test cases. So for example, if you want to write test cases for math service, then you have to create this describe and you have to give a name. So for example, I'm doing it for math service, so you can put it like this and you can start writing your test cases. But if I remove this, right, so can you see it requires 2 arguments. The first one should be the description and the second one should be the spec definitions. And I told you already, spec is nothing but testing things which is related to the test cases. Okay, so let's give the name again, this math service, and we are going to create specifications, something like this. So now the container is ready, so we can start writing our test cases. But the first step, what I will always tell you guys, before start writing your test cases, first try to identify what kind of test case you want to write. So if I take a look at my math.service.ts file, here I can see there is something called as add, and I want to test this first. Okay, and if I ask you, right, who can identify like how many test cases I might have to write, so you can also try to check that as well before starting with the test cases. So what I can expect here is the first thing I have to write a test case that the instance of my math service is created. Okay, so I can create a test case first that check if the instance is created. Okay, so this could be my first test case. The second test case could be the addition. Okay, add, then we have subtract, multiply and divide. So total I have identified 5 test cases, and there is one more in this divide. If you take a look here, right, if my value is b, or the value of b is 0, then it will throw an exception. So I can test this part as well, and then I can also test if the value is not 0, and then it should return me some divide value. Okay, so which means there could be total 6 test cases which we might have to write. Okay, so this is always a best practice to start identifying how much test cases are expected. Okay, so now we know the first jargon which is described, and let's try to understand the second jargon, which is it. So what is it? It is nothing but it is called as individual test. Okay, so inside this it, you can actually write your code to test a particular function or a feature. So which means I can write a test case which will test this function for me. So let's try to write our first test case. So this is my first, which I will do it later. The second test case what I want to write is to check addition of two numbers, right? So to write it, I will make use of it. Can you see again? I have this it, and this also takes two things. First, the expectation, which is your string, and second is the assertion. Okay, so first of all, you have to specify, you have to tell that what is this individual test is doing. So you can just say that should add two numbers correctly. Okay, so you can tell something like that, and then after that you can again open up this lambda expression, something like that, and here you can write your expectation. Okay, so now inside this, write the code to test. So now we know two things. Now we know describe, and now we know what is it. Now let's try to understand the third and the most important one, which is nothing but your expect. Okay, so what is this expect? So this expect is nothing but a function. So this is a function which is used to define the expected outcome of your test cases. And to use this expect, we have to use it with some combination. Okay, so there should be some matcher as well. Okay, so for example, I have a expect, for example, where I'm saying where 1 plus 1, okay, and then once I click on this dot, I can see there are a lot of expects here for me, like this 1 plus 1 to be falsy, to be defined, to be less than, to be not null, to equal, to have. There are so many things which is provided by Jasmine already. So this helps us to write better expects. So what I can say, right, 1 plus 1 is equal to, okay, I can say is 2 equal, I can say 2b, and all those things. So I suppose I'm trying to say here 2 equal. Okay, so it should be equal to 2, right? And that's what this expect helps us to do. So what is this expect now? So this is used to define the expected outcome. All right, so now with these three things, now we are ready to write the test cases for this math service. Okay, so now let's try to import our math service here, because as we are writing test cases for math service, so we have to import it as well. Okay, so we have your math service here. So what we will do first, right, as I have a method here. So this is a class, right? To make use of this add, I have to create instance of my class. So what I will do, right, I will have to create instance. So what I'll do over here, I will say const service is equals to new math service. Okay, so this is what I have. So now what I can do, right, I can directly go and call service dot add. Okay, and what this service dot add returns, it returns a number, right? And what I can do, right, I can just say const result. Okay, and I'm trying to store that outcome inside this result. And what I will provide 10 comma 20. Okay, so this is my first and second number, and I'm storing that inside this result, which means now I have to test it. Okay, if some user provides 10 comma 20 as an input, which is stored inside this result, so what I can say that my result, so I'm expecting my result to be how much? It should be 30, correct? And that's how you write your test cases. So which means, right, okay, if I remove all of this for now, so that's how simple your test case will look like. Okay, so what we did, we just created instance of the math service, we called the method called as add, we provided some our inputs, and we store that into a result, and now we expect that result to match with our number. Okay, which should be equal to 30, right? And you just have to save all the changes. And now to run this test cases, if you are using Angular, so you can make use of ng test, and it will run the test case for you. But as I am using NX, so I will be using npm run test. Okay, the moment I did that, let's see what happens. And this is the way how you run your test cases. Okay, so what this will do, this will start your karma, and as I told you, karma is a runner, and this will help me to show the test cases. So can you see, I see there are some failures, and that is I told you that that was expected. But what you need to do, right? Suppose I don't want to see all this test case because these test cases are failing for your app component. Can you see here it is written app component, app component, app component, and here you can see some description as well. So for example, now I don't have to run all the test cases because I know these are failing test cases. There is something wrong here. So what I can do, right? Suppose if you want to run a specific test case, so what you can do, you can just put a F in the front of describe. So this F is nothing but this will fit. Okay, this will fit your test case and only this one will run. Fix this describe and only run this. So can you see now? I have only one test case and this is success. Okay, if I go on the browser again, on the Chrome browser, and if I run it, so can you see? I have a match service, and can you see the description should add 2 number correctly, and it's in green, which means that my test cases got pass. Okay, so this got pass. So I have covered the unit test cases for this particular function. Now let's try to change this equal to some wrong number. Like for example, just to make our test case fail. So for example, now I'm saying that my result should be equal to 40, but will that work? No, right? That's wrong. So let's save and see what happens. The moment I save, can you see now my test case is failing? I see one fail, and here you can see that it's also giving us a description that expected 30 to equal to 40, which is wrong. So here I can see it in red that should add 2 number correctly got failed, and this is the reason why it got failed. So that's how you can also see that, okay, how your test cases are, when your test cases are passing, when it's getting failed and all that. Now let's try to add some test cases for other methods as well. So let me copy paste. Okay, before that let me remove this comment and let me copy this for the next 4 times and write, and we need to change the description. Now this will subtract the 2 numbers correctly, this will multiply, and this is going to divide it, correct? And that's what it is. And now, okay, let it get failed. It's fine because we made it mistake. Okay, so now let me make this correct. So because addition should return 30 to me here, and what should be this subtraction does? So now you can also add here that, okay, now I want to test dot subtract, and here I can put some number 100, 20, and what should be the outcome? You know, the outcome should be 80. Same thing you can do for the multiply as well. So multiply, here you have to call multiply. Okay, so services dot multiply, and here you can say 10, 20, which means 10 into 20 is 200. And same thing for the divide also. So divide, let me put this as a higher number, 200, and let me keep it as 20. So the division of this will be how much? It should be 10. That's it. And now if I save the changes and let's see what happens. I see after saving the change, 3 test cases are passing, 1 got failed. Let's see which one is that. So if I go on the Chrome browser, if I refresh, and now can you see I'm getting expect, which one is failing? Should divide 2 number correctly, which means this one is failing, and it gives me the reason as well that why it got failed. So the expected was 220, but it is 10, which means there should be some mistake, right? What is the mistake here? Because here I haven't changed this to divide. So that's how you test your test cases as well. Okay, what is going wrong and how you can correct your test case. So now this was the mistake, so I corrected the mistake. If I save the changes, and now I can see all of my 4 test cases got passed here. All are green, and you can see the description as well. So here you can see divide, add, multiply, and subtract. Okay, the spelling is incorrect, so we can make it correct as well. And that's how you start writing test cases in Angular. Again, this is not actually Angular, but I'm trying to explain you how you can start writing, how you can understand the flow of writing test cases in Angular, because we are making use of Jasmine, and I'm trying to make you guys familiar what are all those terms, describe, it, expect, and all that. So one thing to note here that I have written test cases for 4, but there is one more scenario, as I told you, right? So there was one more scenario that if the value of b is 0, then it should throw an exception. Okay, so let's go here and try to test that scenario as well. So let me save all the changes. Okay, 4 success, and let's try to add your test case. So I will say it, and I have to write a description. So it should start with, it should throw an error when dividing by 0. So we put our description here. So what are we expecting? And then over here, what you can add here, start writing your test cases inside this block. Again, I will need to have an instance of match service, and I need to have a call to that where I'm trying to store my result. So I want to make this as 0. I just want to call it. Right? I don't want to store because I know that this should throw an exception. So as this guy is going to throw an exception, so what I can do, right? I can directly take this service, and what I can do, right? You know, I can put it as an expect, and you can directly use it like that. This expect, you can say this service when this service is called, then this will to throw. So this will throw error, right? So we can say throw error. What will be the error it will throw? So you can put the error message what you have added while doing the development. So I'm saying it will throw an error of this cannot divide by 0. So I can copy this same text and I can put it here, which means that I'm expecting if it is divided by 0, it should throw this particular message. And let's save the changes and let's see what happens. Can you see, as I saved it, I can see that my test cases got passed, which means I'm able to test all the scenarios for me. And this is what we have now. I have one question to you guys, that one thing we are doing more often. So I'm repeating myself every time when I'm writing a test case. And you know what is that line? That line is line number 11, which means whenever I'm trying to run a test case, before that, I'm creating an instance of the math service, correct? And my code is getting repeated as well. So we have a very good feature actually, and this is again coming from the Jasmine itself. There is something called as before each. And what this before each does, let's just take a look. So for example, I can make use of this before each. And what this does, this block of code will run before running a test case. So if I put a console.log here, so I can put running before, something like this. And let's save the changes and let's go on the console and see what happens. So if I go here, if I open up the console, can you see? Before each run for the 5 times, means for every test case this guy is running. So what we can do, right, rather than we creating instance every time like this, we can put this inside this before each. So we can cut this and put it over here. So as you cannot have it as a constant because this belongs to this block, so what we can do, we can declare it on the top. So what we will say, we will say let service, and this is of type what? This is of type math service. Okay, so we have declared it on the top, and now we can initialize it in the before each. Okay, and everyone can use this instance of service here. So now we don't need to do this because it is already done in the before each block. So this can be removed from all the code. And see, the magic of this before is that now this before each will provide this new instance of service every time a test case is run. If I save the changes, can you see, still my test case got passed and 5 out of 5 test case are success. That's how you try to make use of before each. There is something called as after each, and what this does, it is some, as the name implies, that this is after each. So this piece of code will run after the test case got completed. Okay, so this block will run for us every time the test case runs successfully. Now there is also something called as before all, which means, what is this before all? As the name says, that before all. So before running the test cases, this block will run. And there is again something called as after all. And again, as per the name, so after all the test case has run, so you have this after all. So this is nothing but just a life cycle, okay, when this runs. Okay, so before all runs once before all the test cases. Suppose if you want to do something one-time setup, so that can be done inside this before all. And same goes for the after all. It runs once after all the test cases, and this can be used for one time. Okay, if you want to run something one time after all the test cases run to do some cleanup, so you can do that. But for example, you want to do some cleanup after each test case, so you have to use after each. And if you want to do some configuration before the each test cases, so use before each. And that's what we are using here in this example, that I want to create an instance of this service so that I can use them to write my test cases. Okay, so I hope this was understanding for you all, that what is all these jargons what we have learned by writing these test cases for this math service. So if you remember, right, when I was started, like we have analyzed that there could be 6 test cases. So for now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 and this 5th one, but there is one more, as I told you. So that was that my instance is created or not. So I can also test that as well. So I can put, and I can say it should create math service. We can see if this math service instance got created or not, yes or no, and then we can put it like this. So what we are expecting here, we are expecting that this math service, this service which we have created the instance, should be truthy, which means it is not null or undefined. Okay, it should be true. And if I save the changes, I'm expecting 6 success. Yes, it is here, and also here you can see that this got updated. So should create math service, and now I can say that I have successfully written a test cases for my math service which has all this logic. Okay, and that's how you write a test case. Again, so now a question will be, Shashi, how do I check the code coverage? Okay, so you need to also see, right, like whenever you are trying to write test cases, your team lead, or if you're trying to apply for an interview, in the interview question they'll ask like how much is your code coverage and all that. Okay, how many lines have you covered and all that they can ask you. So getting to know the test coverage is also very important, right? And thanks to Angular, it also provides us that we can get the code coverage as well. So to find out how much code you're testing, right? So I just went onto the angular.dev website, and here they have already provided how you can get the code coverage. So there is a command ng-test no watch -- code coverage, and this will help you to get your code coverage. So if you are using Angular CLI, so you can copy this command and you can use that directly in your CLI project over here. But as I'm using NX, right? So for me, I have to add something in the package.json. So let me go ahead and add it here. So to test the coverage, so I can put it over here, something like this. And there is a command with NX, which is NX test and then -- code coverage. So if you're Angular, then you can put it like this. Okay, you can put also do something like this, ng test no watch. But for me, it's NX, so I have this added this into package.json. You can directly run them here, but I prefer it to add in package.json so that I can document as well, like how do I run all the scripts for my project. So it is npm run coverage. So the moment I hit this command, let's see what happens. So this will run this command with code coverage added. So this will run all the spec file again, and now if you see, there is some new folder got added here called as coverage, and inside this coverage there is index.html file, and this file you can actually run in your browser and see it will give you the detailed report of your code. So what I will be using a extension here, which is live server. So you can, if you are using VS Code, you can also get this, very important. Actually, this is one of the best if you want to run a live server with an HTML file. So I have it already. So now what I can do, I can open up this index.html file, and it will give me an option to click on go live. If I click on this go live, so can you see it has given me this index.html page where I can see that I have written a test case inside this app/basics, and in that I have this mathservice.ts, and can you see for that I have 100% code coverage here. So the statements, the branch, function and lines, everything is covered. So if I open up this, so you can see that everything is covered in my test case. Okay, and that's how you achieve 100% test coverage. Now, for example, right, if I go back here in the src app in the basics, and what I'll try to do, I'll try to remove the last one what I have added, and let's save the changes. And I want to see that, okay, can you see now it gives a red line over here that, hey, this line is not been covered. So which means that this path was not taken and I have missed this particular test cases, and because of that, if you see, there will be some code deduction, like the score deduction basically. I'm so sorry. Yeah, so can you see that now this is 0%, and this has also impacted my 100% code coverage which was there for this mat.ts file. So now that's why it's very important, and here you can also try to monitor as well that everything is covered or not. And now the moment I add that, again if I refresh, can you see everything got covered as well. So that's why we say this is very important, and code coverage actually helps you to give you the better understanding how much code is covered and what is still pending and how they can be tested as well. So it helps in a lot of other ways. Okay, so that's how you do unit testing, and you also see the code coverage of your application. So now I would like to congratulate you all that you have actually have the basic understanding of writing a test cases. Now we will take the same knowledge and we will try to see how we can write a test cases for Angular component. So if you remember, right, we have added that F here in the math test case, but now I have removed that F because now I have to run all the unit test cases whatever I have. So if I see, right, there are 3 test cases which are failing. If I go on the browser of the Chrome, can you see now it is failing in the app component. So now if you remember, right, so I can see there is a spec file given by Angular team which is app component.spec.ts, which means this file is helping me to test my app component, correct? And that's how the naming goes. So now if I go in the spec.ts, I can see now I have a describe. So now everything will make sense to you guys. Now if you see any Angular spec file, any like component spec file, okay, so now you know what is describe and what is this app component, why is it written over here. You also have an clear idea, right, what is this before it is doing, what is this it, okay, which means we have 3 it, which tells me that, okay, there are 3 unit test cases here, and you can see what is this unit test are doing. So this is doing should create app, this is checking should have UI title, then this says that should render a title, okay, something like that. And now if I save the changes, I can see that my test cases are failing here, which is 3 are failing and 6 are success because it is coming from math.spec.ts. Now to see what is going wrong, what I'll do, I'll go in the browser and see, okay, what error this is showing me. So if I zoom this a bit, so I can clearly see that it is giving me this error null injector, R3 standalone component, activated route and all this, which means that, okay, there is something which is failing trying to configure. Okay, there is some configuration issue and that is related to some routing. To fix this issue, right, as we are using standalone component over here, so now if you take a look, right, so now in our before each there is something called as test bed. I know that you don't know what is test bed for now, but don't worry, I will explain you in the further part. And if you take a look here, right, so I have imported a app component, and the reason why this is into import, because as we all are using standalone of Angular, so this is, can you see, this is standalone true, so that's the reason that I have to use it inside the import. Okay, if you are using Angular 14 or below, then you must have to put this into declare. So there is also something called as declaration, and inside that you will have your component, and in the imports you will be using your app module or something like that. Okay, but I'm happy that this project is on maybe version 18, and that's why I have to do things in the latest way of Angular. Also, if you take a look again on this error again, it doesn't make any sense, right? Why is it throwing error for routing? Because I'm not even using routing here. But if you take a look here, right, in your app component.ts, there is nothing here, but I can see there is one router outlet, it has been used. Okay, and also there are two other components which are used in the HTML, which is header and footer. So there is high chances that maybe header or footer is using some routing related thing, and that's why it might break. So if I go in the header component.ts, I can see I'm using router link, and this could be a reason that it is failing because of some routing issue. Because what we are trying to do here, right, so what we do here when we configure everything, we try to make this component work in isolation. Okay, and that's what we try to do. So whatever configuration is required for this component to compile, we have to provide everything. Okay, and currently it is not been provided, or somehow it is breaking, so that's why we get this error. Okay, so just to prove it, right, if I remove this header component from the HTML, okay, I'm telling that, okay, hey Angular, I'm not using header component anymore, and if I save the changes, save the TS file as well, so can you see now I have 2 success now and 1 failure, and my expectation is there will be no error related to routing. Okay, which is good. Okay, this one is failing because we can talk about this later. So you can see why is this error. It says that undefined and all that. We'll take a look later. But now can you see there is no error related to the routing, and 2 of my test cases are passing, only 1 is failing, which is this. Okay, which is the third one. Okay, now but we will not gonna do that, right? So that's wrong. Okay, it was just for demo purpose, like why these things can also happen, and you have to also make sure that everything is there. Okay, now let's go back in the TS and let's bring this back. Okay, save the changes and let this be error like that. Okay, now how do we fix it? So as this guy is using routing feature, so what we can do, right, in the spec file we can configure. Okay, so as we are using routing, so in the latest version of Angular, if you are using routing, so you use something called as providers. So you are using provide routers or something like that. Okay, so we are gonna use something similar over here. So what I will say, right, okay, I will have a providers here and I will say provide router. Okay, and this is imported also on the top, as you can see, and this provider is nothing but kind of this, and inside that you have a square bracket. It's an empty one, so that we have routing feature enabled. Okay, if I save the changes, can you see now I have only 1 failure, and that is belong to this hello UI. Okay, so no worries, we can also fix this. So let's take a look why this third test case is failing. Now to fix this issue, let's see what is the problem. So this is let's see the expect first. So expect is saying that there should be one h1, and this h1 should contain a content like this. Okay, so to fix this issue, what I can do, I can copy this content and I can go in the HTML. So the expectation is, right, there should be a h1, and this h1 should have hello UI. Okay, and this UI should come from the title itself. So what is our title? So let's put the title here, which is coming from here in the TS file. Okay, and if I save the changes in the HTML, now I'm expectation, yeah, can you see everything got passed now? If I go back, yeah, everything is in green. Now I have a title with where we have UI which is rendered. But is it really I need to do just to make the test case pass? No, right? Because if I show you here, so there will be some unnecessary hello UI which I don't need. Okay, this was just the sake of to prove you that okay, what was that error and how we could have fixed it. The problem is, right, we don't need that test case. So it is not necessary that whatever Angular provided to us, we have to keep it. If it is not necessary, we can remove it, because we are testing based on our business requirement. Okay, so let's save the changes and see if everything is fine, working fine. So now we have 8 test cases and everything is working fine now. So now we have fixed the error of app component spec. now let's try to start with writing the unit test cases, and let's start with this component folder. So inside this component I have few components already created. So let's target one by one. So I have this click result, and in this click result what it does, right, it just displays the total URL clicks. Okay, so and there is not much big code here because this is nothing but my presentational component, and what it does, it just has a output emitter, and right now we have a signal output and we have a input as well, which is required where we can receive the total clicks. Okay, if I show you it in the Angular application, so this is what I am talking about. So if I shorten any URL, okay, and it will give me the link. So I can see that, right, total URL clicks for this website is 0. So this is what I'm talking about. Okay, so this component, so over here, right, so this has only two jobs to do. First thing, to click on track other URL, which is this, and another one is to only represent the total clicks of this URL, whatever which has happened. Okay, so now to test it, right, first I always told you, like, first understand your component, what your component has and what kind of test you want to write for this component. So what I can see, right, I have to write total 3 test cases. So the one test cases will be that the component is created. Okay, the second test case should be that it should emit the track other URL, which is the output, this should emit, and the third one that this should has a input required, right, so which means this should receive a value. Okay, so I can only identify 3 test cases for this component. Okay, so let's try to write a test case here. So to create a test case, again you can click here. What I always do, I'll try to give the same name and just add a spec.ts file. So let's create a file name, click results.component.spec.ts. okay, so we have our spec file. So what was the first step? We have to first have a container, which is nothing but a describe, and describe should have what, which component we are trying to test. So the component name is click result component, so I will put it over here. Okay, and now let's try to open it up, and now inside this I can have my before each, and we'll see why we need this before each. Okay, and now what we can have our it, whatever it we required total 3 it, so we can have it one by one just below this. Okay, now as I told you, right, to create a component, to create a testing file for an Angular component, there are few things which we have to make sure that we are doing it correctly. First of all, we have to set up a isolated environment so that we can test them, right? So first of all, you must have an understanding about few things. So let's take a look at what are those. So there is something called as test bed. Okay, so this test bed is provided by the Angular testing framework. So it's basically a testing utility, right, which provides method to create testing module, okay, which helps to configure the component, the services, and also helps to create component instance. Okay, so if you remember, right, when we were creating instance of this math file, right, we were doing it manually by saying new, by using new keyword right over here. Okay, but now with this test bed, this will help us to create the instance of the component. Okay, so as I'm telling this again and again, so this is very important for us to create the, or I would say, which allows us to test the component and service in isolation. So this is why the test bed is very important. Okay, and this test bed has something very interesting, which is something called as configure testing module. Okay, what is this configure testing module? So this will help me to create a miniature Angular module, okay, especially just for testing again. So for example, if we have something dependent, right, so there are some dependency of the component where we have to import, declare, or provide. So this will help us to do the same job here. All right, so now let's try to take a look how we can actually use them in our component. So what we have to do, right, so whenever we are running a test case, so before that I want to create that environment, correct? So to create an environment of before every test cases, so we have to use before each, and this is the reason why I'm putting that logic in the before each. So what I will do, I will make this as async because this is an asynchronous code. So I'll use await. Then we have test bed dot configure testing module. Can you see we have this method configure testing module, and inside that we can add our imports. So we can add all. So we are just trying to mimic actually to create the environment. So we will have imports here. We will also have declaration, same like a Angular module, right? And we will also have providers. Okay, so as this is async, so await, and then we have something called as compile components. Okay, so this will help me to compile all together. Okay, so compile components and this close it. All right, so now in this we can import, declare, provide whatever is required for this component to run. Okay, as we are using a standalone component, so what we can do, we have to import it. So we should not put into declare. So there is no use of declare anymore as this is standalone. So we will make use of click result component. Okay, so now you must have got an idea what is test bed and what is this configure testing module is doing here. Okay, and trust me guys, thanks to this test bed this is actually helping a lot now, because imagine the way we were writing test cases back in Angular version 2.3. It was very much tough, but with test bed I think it's quite easy to do things in isolation. So now I have to create a instance of a component. So to do that, right, what I will do first, I will create a component on the top. Okay, component, this is of type what? So what is the type of our component? It is nothing but the name, right? So let's create a type of the component like this. Okay, and now I will be using another important term which is called as fixture, and we will make use of component fixture, which is this, and we will provide, okay, of which fixture we are trying to create. We are trying to create a fixture for this component, which is our click result component, correct? So now we have two things here, components and fixture. Now let's try to understand what is this fixture. Okay, so the fixture is nothing but a wrapper around the component instance created by Angular testing utility. Okay, so it might sound confusing, but let me write it down over here so that things can be very clear. So what is this? A wrapper. It's a wrapper around the component instance which is created by Angular testing utility. Okay, so now we will try to see this definition in action. Okay, so what we will do, right? So we have fixture created on the top, which is of type this, which is referring to this particular component. So we can say fixture is equals to what? It's a wrapper, right, which is created by testing utility. What is our testing utility? Is nothing but our test bed. Okay, so with this test bed we can create component. Okay, and we can pass the component. What component we want to create for testing? We want to create click result component, right? And that's what I have passed here. So now if you hover on this, right, so can you see this is of type component fixture. So it basically holds the instance of our component, and that's what I need, right? Remember, I needed an instance of my service here to use it while using in the test cases. Yes or no? So I'm doing something similar now, but making use of fixture here. So now as this thing holds the instance of my component, so what I can do, I can initialize my component now by saying component is equals to fixture dot component instance, and that's it. So now I have a copy of our component inside this. So now if I show you, if I say component dot, can you see I'm able to access my click, on track URL, everything, right? Track other URL, all that. So if I go here, I'm able to access all these properties and methods. Yes or no? And who is helping me to do it? The fixture is helping me to do that, to create the instance and pass it to the component. Okay, so now I can say that I have a component and fixture ready, because this fixture is very much powerful, to be honest. Imagine if you also want to run a change detection, right? So that can also be done with this fixture. You can say fixture dot detect changes. See, you can explicitly call change detection as well if it is required for your unit test. Okay, so that's the power of this fixture. And now I can say that my setup is ready and is ready to use for writing the test case. So now let me remove this and let me start writing my first test case. So to write a test case, I'll say it, and first test case what? It should create what? It should create a component, which is this name. So that's what I always do. It should create a component. And as you open up this, now what I can do, I can add a expect. I can put a expect here and I can say that, hey, my component which is here on the top, this should be truthy. So we can say to be truthy, that it is not false, that this component got created. So that what I can mention over here. So this is my first test case. Now let's try to identify our second test case. So if I go back to the click result component, what I want to write a test case for that, whenever this function is called, I want to see that this track URL is emitting. Okay, so I have to verify this. Okay, so this is not going to be very straightforward, because this we have to make sure that this has been checked by somebody. Okay, what I mean is like this should be spied by somebody, like someone is spying on this, that hey, if this is emitting this or not, correct? So as I told you that term, right, spy, so there is something called as spy on, and again this is provided by the Jasmine framework itself. So what it does, it's a function which is used to create a spy on existing method of object. Okay, so what this will do, right, this will try to see this, okay, that okay, this object is calling this method or not. Okay, so this is what we are going to create by using this spy on. Okay, so let's go ahead and create your second test case by saying it should emit track other URL when on track other URL is called, correct? And inside that, let's start writing our test case. Okay, so what I will put it here, I will create a spy on. So let's create a spy on. Where you want to spy? I want to spy it on component dot track other URL. So this is where I want to spy. Okay, so I'm spying on this, but on which method I want to spy? Okay, I want to spy on a method called as emit. Can you see? I have emit option here. Okay, and from where did this came, right? So if you see this, right, if I click on this track URL dot, can you see I have emit and subscribe, and that's what it was showing that option to me there. So I can spy on these two methods. So where I want to spy on, I want to spy on this emit. So that's what I have added here. So this is what the spy on helps us to do. And now what I will do, I will say, okay, component dot, I want to execute my function. I want to call my function. So if I call my function, what will happen? Okay, so I have called my function. I did a action. So this is nothing but my act. Okay, I have called my function, and now I want to assert. Yes or no? I want to assert. Assert means I want to expect. So what is the expectation? If this function is called, the expectation would be expect component dot track other URL dot emit. Okay, my expectation is that this thing have been called, right? So I can say to have been called. Yes or no? So I can put something like this, and now I can save the changes. Let's save all the changes. And now let's go back here and let's try to again do your testing. So let's try to run your test case, npm run test, and let me also put a F over here so that we are just targeting this particular specific one, correct? So let me put a F here as well before I go to see the result. Save the changes. Okay, I can see there is 2 failure. It's fine. So can you see again, I'm getting some issue over here related to the routing, which means that something is using, right? So what we can do, we can help us to put here provide router. Yes or no? We did that last time also, right? So we can put it over here as well. And let's save the changes, and now I can see there is 2 success. Okay, I can see both of them are running fine, so both of the test cases got passed. Okay, so you can also be very explicit and you can say that 2 have been called once. Okay, then you will have with, then you have called times. You can put times here, how many times, 1 time, 2 time, everything you can put it over here. Okay, so for example, if I say here I'm calling this function 2 times, so what will be the expectation? This track emit will be called how many times? 2 times, right? So let me put it here as 2 times. If I save the changes, go back, can you see? Still it is passing. If I put it as 1 time, will this work? See, it failed, right? It failed, right? So that's how you can write your test cases. So let me put it for a single time, and that's how this test case is passing. Now let's try to understand our third test case for this component. And what is that? The third one should be that the click input is required, right? So we have to make sure that this is required. Okay, which means that if no one is providing value to this should fail. Okay, or we can check that the value is provided is correct or not, right? So that we can also validate. So let's go here and try to write one more individual test. Okay, so here we can say should have clicks input as required. Okay, or it's receive a value, something like that you can put. Okay, now let's go here and do something similar. So now I have a component on the top. Yes or no? Okay, I have a component which has this clicks. So this clicks is my property, but this is a signal, so signal has to be used like this. Okay, just to be sure, right? But before this, right, what I want to do, I want to use the instance, right? So I will say fixture dot component ref. So what I want to do, right, I want to use this component reference because this is an input, right? And I want to provide a value to this input. So how I can do that in the latest way? So this is something called as component ref dot set input. So as this is signal, right? So for example, people can say, hey Shashi, we can also do like this, right? Component dot clicks dot, can you see? I cannot use the set, right? This is a signal, but I cannot use that set over here. So to add the value to such input, like input signals, so you make use of fixture dot component ref dot set input, and then you can tell your, okay, what is the name of that input? The name is clicks, and what is the value you want to give to that? So suppose I want to give it as 10. Okay, so what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to set a value of my input, which is this. Okay, so and I provided the value to be as 10 there. Okay, and now what I can do, right, as I am passing a value to the input, I want to run the change detection as well so that the changes are detected. So I'll say fixture dot detect changes. Okay, so whenever there is change in input, you should always detect the changes there in the test case. Now I can say expect what? Expect the component dot clicks, okay, this to be how much? To be 10, because as the input value provided was 10, so the component clicks value should also be 10. And now if I save the changes, I can see the 3 test cases got passed. And now I can say that, okay, the test case for this component is done. So now this is 100% covered. And just to check that also, what you can do npm run coverage. Yes or no? And now this will run the coverage for us. And now if I refresh and if I go back to this local host, I think there was a port which was already running. If I go here, if I refresh, go back, and now in the components I have a footer oh no, this is wrong. I don't know why is it not showing. Let's see. Maybe what I can do, right? I can just close this. Okay, open up your VS Code again and let me close this port which was running the live server. Go in the coverage, click this HTML. Right. I got it. What's the issue, guys? So I can go back here and I can remove this F because it is only showing test case for this click result. Okay, save the changes. Okay, this will again run the code coverage for us, or else I can stop it and start again. Run the test case coverage. This will again create the index.html file, and now I can click on go live. So now if I go here, can you see in the app component we have a click result? So we have a test file and everything is 100. Okay, which means this test case is completely covered. Okay, this scenario is completely covered for this particular component, and that's how you write a unit test case for a presentational component in Angular. Now let's imagine that we are not using input signal and we are still using the old way of creating these inputs, right? So what I can do, right, I can remove this code from here for now. Okay, so now we have this click, something like this kind of input, and what we can do, right, so this will also make some changes here. So this is not signal, so I can remove this. Okay, and also in the spec file I can remove this. Okay, so if the changes is done like this, right, if I save the changes, it's working fine, but now I don't need to provide the input like this. So what I can do, I can just remove this fixture and set input. I can say component dot and I can put the click and I can directly assign a value to this, and that assigned value I can directly go and check that if the value is 10 or not. If I save the changes, can you see it's still working fine? Okay, so that's how you were doing in the previous versions of Angular, like in 10 to 12, 13, 15, whatever we have came. But with signals, right, so there are things which are changing and we all need to adapt to that, and that's what I'm trying to do, so that whatever I'm teaching in this particular course, everything belongs to the latest version of Angular. Okay, so let me do everything back to normal. So now let's go ahead and try to test our second component over here. So we are done with the click result. In the header component, let's try to first check what we have. Okay, so we don't have any function, method or any properties here to test it. It's just a pure UI which displays the header component. That's it. So now what we can do, right, we can just skip this header one and we can go to the search click form, and in this form let's see what we have. So here we have something similar what we had in the previous one, which has a on short URL submit. Again we have this on submit, which is an output, and then we have this input as well, which is kind of a model which will help us to do the two-way data binding with the queries. Okay, now let's go ahead and create the file for it. So I'll rename this and I'll create the file name here with this, that pec.ts. and what we have to do, what I think I can do, I can copy paste most of the things. So what I'll do, I'll just copy everything here and put it over here, and what I have to do is just have to rename things. So let's go and do that. So let's use this import, should be click result component, and this will also change to, okay, this is not right. Okay, I did a mistake, so let me remove this, and this will change to this search click form component. Okay, so that was my mistake, so let me remove everything and change it to this. Okay, let me do a control F, go here and replace all the instance with search click form, and again replace them all together. Okay, now we have to import this new component, so let's go and import that and save the changes, and let's fix few of the things. So we don't require this test case, so let's remove them, and now we need only one test case at the moment, which is this search click by form. Okay, and let's save the changes and let's see if our test case is getting captured or not. So previously we had 11, so let's see if this time we get 12. Okay, so now we have 12 specs, and I can see we have one more search click forms component should create. Okay, so as we have did almost similar thing here, like, so no need to explain it again, so you are already know what is done over here. Now let's try to identify what extra we have to do here. So we have to write a test case which will help me to check that again it will should emit the track URL, okay, when the track URL function button is clicked. Okay, so we have to do something similar so over here as well. So let's go here in the spec and try to add it, and we say it should emit track other URL event when track other URL button is clicked. Okay, and that's how you open this up and start writing your logic. Okay, now what we have to do, again we can put a spy on, right? If you know already, right? So you have to just put a spy on, but you have to make sure where you are putting that spy on. So we can say component dot, so we have something called as on submit. Okay, so we have on submit, and we have to spy on what? We have to spy on the emit. Okay, so we can spy on the emit, and then we can say component dot, we have to call the method name, which is on short URL submit. So once we call this, what we can expect? We can expect that component dot on submit dot emit emit to have been called. Okay, and that's how we can add our test case here. And now there should be 13 test case and it is also getting passed. So with this test case, I just identified that there are few something which we can improve here. Like for example, if you go here, right? So if you take a look, when I user click on this on short URL submit, so I'm emitting it with some value, right? So, and the value is nothing but my shortened URL, which is this coming from the model, and this model act as both input and output. So what we can do here in this component, that so whenever this emit, so what I can do, I can say fixture dot component ref, and then I can say set input, correct? And in the set input, what I want to set, I want to set this particular shortened URL. So I'll go here and set this with a value. Okay, so I have to provide a value here. So what I'll do, I'll just say const short URL, and I will give some dummy value, https test.com/123. This is my short URL, and what I'm saying, right, this value will be initialized with this short URL. Okay, and just to be sure, I can say fixture dot detect changes, right? So once I have added this, right, so what I can do, right, so this submit dot emit will be called. So I can improve my expect by saying to have been called once with what value, with the short URL. So I'm making sure that whenever this emit is called, this is called with a value which is this, because that's what we are trying to emit. Okay, so if I save the changes, if I go back, can you see I have 13 test cases and everything is running fine. So for example, if I make some mistake, so this is called with some wrong value, save the changes, can you see this test case got failed? And if I go to the Chrome and I can see that, hey, your expectation was this, but actually you got this. Okay, so that's what you can see, that there is a error here on this browser. So to fix it, that you can say that, okay, this is expected to have been called with this proper short URL value. Okay, and that's how you try to improve your assertion to be more bulletproof, so that you can receive less code review comments. So now we are done with this basic, we are done with click result, we are done with this search click form. Let's take a look at this table component. I think so this should be something different, which we can actually do some good test here. Okay, so here I have a table component, and yeah, I can see some good properties here which we can test. And then we have a method here. What it does, it helps to do copy to clipboard. Okay, let's take an example here in this UI. So if I go on the URLs, and I should see some list of like some data here in the table, and if I click on this copy, so this will help me to copy to the clipboard. And if I paste it over here, or maybe let's go here and paste, so can you see I have copied that short URL which was this, and if I hit enter, then this will take me to the long URL website. So this is what that function does. This is the copy, and this copy is been done by this particular function which I just showed you. Okay, we have to test this particular logic now. To do that, let's create a new spec file. So let's rename this and copy. Let's go here, control V dot spec dot ts. Okay, we will create a describe, and this name will be table component, and then this is how we will have it like this. Then we can create let component, we will give the type to this, so table component. We can create a fixture by saying let fixture, again we will give a type which is of type component fixture, right? Yep, and then this is of type again table component. Okay, so these two we have. Let's see, why is it complaining? Table component, did I do anything wrong? Oh yes, this table component will have a type, if I'm not wrong, because it's a generic one, so I can provide a type to it with any for now. And over here as well, I have to do that, it has any. Okay, so now this is what we have, and what we have to create, we have to configure them into a before each. Okay, so let's try to also do that. So in this here, we will have a before each, and in this before each, what we will do, we will have make use of the test bed. So this is await, then this will be async, and we will make use of test bed, and inside that we have a configure component, configure not compiler, component. Okay, so let's remove this test bed dot configure testing module. I'm so sorry guys, testing module, and in that we will start using the imports. So import will be of table component for now, that's it, and we will see if anything else is required, and I can say compile component. So this will help me to create the isolation, and then let's create the fixture instance. So we'll say fixture is equals to your test bed dot create component, and this will help me to create a table component inside, and we can use the instance to initialize our component. So we can say component is equals to fixture dot component instance. Okay, and that's how we have did a setup of. And now as always, we create our first test case, which is it, and what it should do, it should create table component. Okay, and the table component is created. So how do we test it? We can just say that expect my component to be truthy. Okay, and that's how you write your test case. And if I save the changes, my expectation is right, it should also add one more test case which should make it click 14. So let me run this again. So now I should have a 14 test case and everything should be green. Okay, so I have 14 test cases, which means I was able to configure this spec file correctly. Now I have to write a test. So let's first identify what should be my test case. Okay, so over here, let's try to analyze this. So what this does, so whenever user clicks on copy to clipboard, so I'm using this navigator again coming from window object. So navigator.clipboard, then we take the text from the user, and then what we do, we try to set this selected row value, which is this property, set it with the user, whatever user has set, and then it changes the button text to copied. Okay, and after 2 seconds I have to clear the message and again make it back to copy after 2 seconds. And if something went wrong, then it will go to this error block and it will fail to copy or something like that. Okay, if I go back to the UI to explain you in better way, so if you see it, if I click on copy, so this copy will change to copied, and after 2 seconds this will again become copy. So this is what the test case I have to write. Okay, and let's go back to this spec file. So let's create our first it, and let's give it a good name. It should set button text. Okay, it should set the button text to copied, and we also have a selected row, right? So and selected row to the copied text. Okay, on successful copy. This also we have to make sure successful copy. Okay, I can go wrong with spelling, so please excuse me guys for that. Okay, now let's go ahead and try to write the logic for it. Okay, so we have to open up this. Right, now let's start writing here something. Okay, so now what we will do, we will first create a text which we want to copy. So let's create a sample. Okay, we can create a sample text copy. Let's give a name to this sample text. Any text we can give, right? So this is the sample text which will act as an input to the function basically. Okay, and then what I can do, right? So I have a navigator right over here. So this navigator, I have to make sure that this function is called, which is write text. Okay, so what I can do, right? So I can spy on this guy. So this navigator, inside that we have this clipboard, so we can spy on that particular navigator. So what we will say spy on. Okay, spy on what? So I want to spy on this navigator dot, we have clipboard, right? So we can say clipboard. So in this clipboard there should be something called as write. Can you see write text? This is what I want to target. So please spy on this, and so we can say I can chain it with a lot of things. So I can say, and I'm trying to chain it, and I'm saying, okay, when this is called, then please return a value, because this clipboard is nothing but is what, right? This is nothing but a promise. It returns a promise, right? So I want to make it success. So I have to fake it. So I will saying that, okay, if spy on this, write text and please return a value, as this is promise, so I have to resolve my promise. Okay, so I'm saying promise dot resolve. Okay, we can say resolve, and that's it. So this is what this spy will do. So see the magic of Jasmine. That's how Jasmine is helping us to write, like making things easy for us. Okay, so that's what we did. And now what we will do, we'll say component dot, we will call this method called as copy to clipboard, and we will pass a sample text as an input. So this is what my input is. Okay, and now if you remember, right, when this function is called, so we have to also make sure that we are calling this navigator dot clipboard, right, where we will write the text. So let's try to also call it over here. Just below it I will say this is a promise, so I'll say await, as this is promise, so we have to use await. So please make sure guys, and then we'll see navigator dot clipboard dot write text, and we will write a sample text to it. Okay, so as this is await, so I have to make this function as async, correct? So now I'm just trying to simulate whatever that function will do. So if I click this, so this will be called with the sample text, and then what I have to do, right, I have to expect now. So if this is called, so I can expect what? My component dot selected row. Remember, so if everything goes right, then this selected row will change to this text which I passed as an input. So same thing I want to expect. So I'm expecting that my selected row to be what? To be the sample text what user has passed, correct? Also I can expect something here. So I can also say expect my component dot button text. Okay, so my button text should also be to what? Should change to be what? If I go here again in the UI, just to explain you, if I change this, so what my button text changed to? Copied, right? So that's what I want to change it over here as well. So this will change to copied. Okay, and this is what the test case is doing. This is what a unit I'm trying to test, a small unit of test case, that it should set the button text to copied, which should be in the caps, and select selected row to be, okay, I made a mistake here. So selected row to the copy text on successful copy. Okay, right. So this is what I'm trying to test. If I go back, can you see now this test gate got passed? If I make some changes here, if I save it, right, see it got failed. And if you take a look here, it will say that, hey, I expected it to be copied, but it was copied. So that is wrong, right? So that's what it is. So it should be copied. Okay, and that's what we have written our first test case. Now I can see also there are something, right, which happens after 2 seconds, which means I want to reset the button text to copy after 2 seconds. So I can also write a unit test for that. So I can say it should reset button text to copy after 2 seconds. Yes or no? And that I have to write it inside. Let's go and do it again. Now to do such things, we have to simulate something. Okay, so we have to have a clock ready, because now this is related to something called as time, like 2 seconds, 5 seconds and all that. Again, do not worry, we have something called as Jasmine.clock. So Jasmine provides a clock which we need to install. Okay, so we are installing a clock from Jasmine, and now again we will have something similar. So I'll just copy these two things. Okay, paste it below. Okay, now again I'm trying to do something similar. So now what I will do, again I will await, and I will call this navigator with the sample text. So let me again do the same thing, and as I'm using await, I have to make this async. Okay, so again once this is called, what I'll do now, I will ask Jasmine to help me here. So I'll say Jasmine.clock.tick. So there is something called as tick in the clock. So clock.tick, tick the 2 seconds. So what we are doing, we are trying to fast forward things. Okay, so I'm trying to fast forward because you cannot wait for 2 seconds. Your test case will not wait for you for 2 seconds. So Jasmine will help me to provide that environment that 2 seconds is fast forwarded. So after 2 seconds, what happens, right? So you can put your expectation here. So after 2 seconds, my component dot button text will change to, this will change to what? This will change again back to copy. So previously it was copied, but after 2 seconds it will change again back to copy. And that's how we have added one more unit test for it, and see it is again got passed, and we have 16 test cases which are passed now. Okay, so now we have covered the scenario, 2 scenarios here. So the first thing is that when user click on this copy to clipboard, it will set the text selected row with this text and button text to copied, and after 2 seconds it will change back again to copy. Now we have to make sure that this scenario is also getting passed. Okay, so for that again we will have to write a small unit test case for it as well. So let's go ahead and also cover that unit test. So again we will say it should, okay, it should log an error message if copy fails. Yes or no? So what we are doing here, we are logging a message, right? Fail to copy the URL with the error. Okay, so let's save the changes here and let's try to add this. Okay, so now we have to make sure that we are also tracking this console, that this console is called. Okay, so what we will do, we will first create a spy on. So let's create a spy on whom? I want to spy on this console. Console has a lot of things. So console.log, console.error, console.warning. Can you see console.warn, console.error? Okay, so we have a lot of things from console as well, lot of methods. So what we will do, we have to spy on console's error, correct? So that we can do, and we can store it inside a spy. So we can say this is my console spy. Okay, so this is my console spy which I will be using in the future, so if it is called or not. And next we'll again take this sample text from the top, and we are going to call this same thing. Okay, so let's call the same thing over here, but this time remember, right? So whenever the copy to clipboard is called with this right text, I don't want to resolve the promise. This time I want to reject the promise. So I'll say dot reject, and I can reject it with the error message by giving that copy failed. Okay, so this time I rejected, and now what user will do, user will again call the same function component dot copy to clipboard, and we will pass the sample input this time. But now we know, right, the promise is not resolved, it will fail this time. So again we will make use of await, and let's call the copy to clipboard here with the navigator. Okay, so this should be async as we are using await. Okay, so as you have did it here, right, and now you can catch the error, okay, if you want. So that can be done by this. Okay, if you provide it like this, so that also you can do. You can catch the error, and just for not getting errors when you're running the test cases, so that can also be done. But let's go ahead and expect now. So what I can do, I can expect now. Expect what? So we have a console spy. So we have to make sure that this is been called. So to have been called with, okay, it will only call once. So we can put only called once with, we can put an error message, failed to copy URL. Yes or no? Make sure guys this text is matching with this console error. So we have this failed to copy, okay, with every space and thing, so that or else it might break there. So we have to put it here that, okay, this will call the console.log error with this message, okay, with this message, and then we have a error message here as well. So what is the error message? The error message was copy failed. Okay, so this is coming from your component, which is this, and this error is coming from what the promise has given after rejection. So this should match with, okay, let's save the changes and let's see if there is any error. Okay, so I can see there is one error came. Let's see what is that. I think that was expected. So it says that copy failed thrown error. Okay, the problem is, right, what happens when I'm running my test case, it is throwing error at this point of time. Yes or no? Because as the promise got rejected, and this will throw an error, and this will stop the execution of my test case, which I don't want. And that's the reason, right, I need to handle this. Okay, so I need to handle this exception by saying catch. You just have to like fake it. That's it. So let's fake it by just saying, okay, I'm just trying to handle. Okay, so we will handle it here, handle the error. Okay, this is wrong comment. This, okay, so we just trying to handle the error. And now if I save the changes, can you see now I get 17 success, which means all of my test cases got passed for my table component as well, right? And now let's stop this port and let's see the code coverage as well in the index.html. Again, click on go live, and now I can see that in the table also I have 90% achieved for the statement. Let's see which one is missed. We can also take a look at that. Okay, so now we are not checking this one, so we have to make sure that we are also testing this, but I think we have added that, right? Let's see why is it not taking it then. So let's check the test cases for us. So now this is the one which is doing the resolve, and this comes inside this. Okay, so this is not changing the button text, so this one should not be the one. And yeah, over here we are changing the button text to copy, but I don't know, somehow it is not. Okay, yes, so I can see the mistake here that, okay, I'm not even calling that function. Okay, so that's the problem. So it's not going in that particular block, so I have to call component dot, the function name is copy to clipboard, and we can pass the sample text to this. Okay, and that's what it should make it work now. So if I save the changes, if I go back, stop the port, and again go to this index.html and try to start this again, and now I can see the table has 100% coverage. Okay, so everything is covered now, and this part is also got covered. But I just saw one problem there just by analyzing this, that okay, I have installed this Jasmine clock, but I was not able to uninstall. Like once the test case is done, right, you also have to make sure that you're clearing this. So I can say jasmine.clock.uninstall, so we don't need it, so we can uninstall it. Okay, and save the changes, and everything still should be the same. Okay, and now I'm so happy to see that now we have 100% coverage for whatever component we have touched till now. Okay, so we have click result, search form, and table. So let's take a look at the another component which we can target, and let's see if there are something unique which we can test. Okay, so we have a URL form, and I think this has something similar what we have already did, so I can skip this one and maybe you guys can give it a try. And let's go for the second one, which is URL result. Okay, and inside that again we have something similar test case, so we can write the same test case for this as well. So maybe I can skip this one as well. So now maybe I can say that this can be done quite easily because this covers something similar concepts what we have did it for the top. Okay, anyway I will be doing it later part, but I will not record that in this particular video. Okay, now let's take a look at our pages. Okay, so now it's time for us to test this analytic component, home component, URL, and this not found. Okay, let's take it look at them one by one. So first we will try to target the analytic one, and inside that we will first try to see what is the component is doing there. Okay, so here in this component we have, okay, we can see the analytics here. We can see the total clicks, the is result visible, the short URL. We have analytics service also called, which is a good one. So now we have services getting injected in the component. Okay, so as you do the constructor injector, right? So we are using here the inject function to do the dependency injection. So we have two methods which is doing some API calls. Yes, we have this get click URL, and and this does the API call, and we have this analytics service. That's good. So this is something good which maybe we can take a look, and let's try to write a test case for this one. Okay, first of all, to create the test file, again let me go back, click on this rename, copy this and create a spec file here, .spec.ts. okay, again you will have a describe. Maybe if you want you can copy paste it from the previous one, but that's how you should do. But I will always recommend you guys to type it everything by yourself so that it makes you more comfortable with writing the test, so you know each part what you need to do. So that's why I always recommend writing our test case, creating the file, everything by your own, okay, rather than doing copy paste. Okay, so then it should have a it, and that's how it should be start, right? The basic component gets started. Okay, this is what you have to fill now. So now we have analytics component, so we can say we are writing a describe for a analytics component. Okay, so if we have a component, so we can create a component again like this, and we can pass the component name here as control V, and we have to import. Okay, so if we have a component, let's create a fixture, and fixture will be created by component fixture, and we can give the type as the analytics component. Okay, so you have fixture also ready, and now let's try to create this test bed. So we'll say async because I know I have to use a wait here, so we'll use test bed dot configure testing module, and in testing module you will have what? You will have the import, right? You have the imports. Import will have your component, which is analytics component, and then you might also have a provider because you are using services, so you can have a provider. So let me keep it like this, and then compile component. So this is ready, and now we can have creating this it. But before that, right, we also create the instance of the component. So we have fixture is equals to testbed dot create component. We can pass the component name as analytics component, and you can pass the instance to this, which is fixture dot component instance. Okay, I know I could have copy pasted, but I just wanted to encourage you guys that that's how you should also do. Try to type it out, try to see what things, how do we configure a test file, and trust me guys, this becomes breeze later on. Okay, let me change the spelling. It correct was wrong. This should be okay. So all right, now this is the way how you do, and now here you can say it should create the analytics component, and you can just write your first expect that your component should be truthy. Okay, and save the changes. So now I'm expecting there should be 18. Let's take a look, start this again, and there should 18 components, 18 success. Okay, 18, and there is one thing which is failing, and it is failing for our analytics component. So it's saying that hey, you are using analytics service, so make sure that you are importing it. Okay, let me add a import analytics service, and let's see if that helps me to pass the test case. Save the changes. It still breaks, and let's see why it breaks this time. Again, it's saying that hey, you are using an injection token inside that and all that. So let's try to first analyze the component, and then we try to add the providers here. Okay, or else we could have just do this trial and error, all that. So let's see our component, analytics component, and in this analytics component we are injecting this service. Okay, and this service is having this app info, and this app info is nothing but a injection token what I have created. So let me show you the injection token. So I have created this injection token, and what it does, right, if it is a development environment, then what it does, it will give me the instance of this app info. If it is production, then it will give me instance of this. So as I'm using that, so I will have to be smart enough to import it properly in the spec file. Okay, and also if you take a look, right, in this analytics service we are also injecting HTTP client, so we have to make sure that we have a provider same like what we add in this app config, right? So if you are doing HTTP client, so you should provide this in the provider. Okay, so let's try to fix our environment. So what I'll do, I will first try to say provide HTTP client. Okay, the first thing what I have to do that, and the second thing, right, I have to create a analytics service. So let me also add an analytics service. Okay, analytics service got added. Let me format this a bit. Okay, now the third thing, if you remember, right, so I'm using a provide. So let me also add a provide. So as I'm using this app info, so I have this app info. So whenever someone is calling this app info, please use this value what I have created. Use the dev info. Okay, just for test. You can also create your own sample for this test, so it should be fine. So now whenever this is injected, this app info is injected inside this analytics service. Okay, please give him the instance of this dev info, dev app info, which is coming from this. So if I go here, so this is what the dev info is. So which means this is what my API URL will be if I want to use it for the test. Okay, so that's how you try to configure your component. So now the isolation is ready, the component is ready. Now you can start writing your expect, and can you see now this also got passed because this is successfully configured. Okay, save the changes, and now you see all green. So in this analytic component, so we have should create analytics component. So we have successfully created the analytics component here. Now we have to start writing our test case. cases. Now let's see what is the first test case we can write. So over here, right, whenever user is calling this function get URL code, what it does, he sends a short URL. Okay, he sends a shortened URL, and what this does, right, this has a function extract URL code, and it is calling this service called as get clicks by passing the URL code. And once he gets that, he is trying to set the total click value to this number, and also is result visible becomes true. Okay, so this thing we also have to try to test it inside this spec file. So let's go ahead and create the it. So we will say it should, what we want to test, it should set the total clicks and is result visible on successful what. So we have a method, right, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, on successful get URL code click. So if this is success, then this should set the value, right, on this particular call. And now again, let's try to write our code here. Okay, I did a mistake, I'm sorry. Right, now here we have to write the logic. So now let's try to mock things. So I'll say const mock clicks, or we can say sample clicks or whatever it is. So mock click, I'm just putting suppose we have 10 clicks. Okay, and then also we have to mock the short URL. So mock short URLs, and the short URL is nothing but https short, I can put xyz, it's also fine, xyz.com/abc123. so this is my URL code, or whatever you can put it over here. Okay, this is just we are putting it for now. And now what you have to do, right, you have to try to call, right, that analytics service. Okay, so what we can say spy on, we can use spy on. Okay, where you want to spy on the analytics service. Okay, so but we don't have the analytics service created. So what I will have to do, I will have to initialize it. Okay, so let's go and initialize our analytics service. So we can just give the name as service and give the type analytics service. Okay, and to initialize it, we can make use of testbed to do that. So we have service on the top, we will make use of testbed dot inject. See, we are using the testbed to inject that particular service. So the service name is analytics service. Okay, and now that we can do spy. So we have a service dot. Okay, so we are trying to spy on this. Okay, so we are spying on this service, and this service has something called as get clicks. Okay, so dot get clicks, and then if you remember, right, and we have something called as and then we have something called as return value. So whenever this get service is called, you have to return a observable. So to create an observable, we can say off is nothing but an rxjs, okay, operator off, and then this will help me to convert this value into an observable. So I can pass the mock click. Okay, why I'm doing all of this? Because if you go to the analytics service, what this does, right, this will help me to return the particular URL, the total number of clicks, and that is nothing but a number, right? So that's what I'm trying to do, because I know my business, what it is actually doing, so I know what it has to be set. Okay, so whenever this service is calling, I'm trying to return this mock click, right? Let's proceed further, and then what we have to do, we have to call it, right? So what we will do, we will say component dot get URL code clicks, and inside that we have to pass the short URL. So I'm passing the mock short URL. Okay, so once this is called, what is your expectation? So your expectation is, right, you will say expect. What expect? So analytics service, which is service dot get clicks, this will be called, right? So this will say this to have been called. Okay, I'm sorry, this should be outside. To have been called once with. Remember what its service gets? It gets the URL code. If you see the logic, I know this can get a bit difficult because I haven't explained this part. So if you take a look, right, if I'm passing a short URL, so I'm trying to extract the URL code. If you go to this extract URL code, what it does, it takes the URL and it's trying to split, and after slash whatever it is, it will take that pop, which means, right, if I have a URL like this xyz.com/abc123, so it will take this as a code. Okay, and that's what I want to check, that this get click will take an input as this particular code. Okay, so I'm saying this will be have called with a value abc123. Okay, so this is what it will get extracted. So this is my first expect. My second expect will be expect component dot total clicks. This will set the value, and this will set the value to be how much? 10, because we are passing 10 here, right, that this will return a 10 whenever the get click is called. And the last one should be, right, we want to expect the component dot is result visible to true, to be true, right? And that's it. And let's save the changes. So currently we have 18 and now it becomes 19. So my 19 test case are getting passed. Okay, see this magic of spy on. So now we can spy on any service. Okay, any service whatever we have, we can spy on them, we can return what this service should do, do, what this should return. We are trying to create a mocking, okay, and that mock we return and we try to expect it that if this is what we are getting it or not, okay. And that's how you can try to write your own test cases. So first of all, writing a test cases is not that just go and jump to the test case and start writing. First, you need to understand that what is this piece of code is doing, okay. If you know what is this doing, then only it's a right time to go for you to start writing the test cases, because I know what is this method doing, okay. So this method is taking the short URL. From this URL, it removes the code and extract the code and give it to this guy, and this URL code is passed to this service called as get click. It takes this code. If it is success, then it sets the total click value, and it also sets the is result value to true. And the same thing, if you take a look, right, I have did it over here, okay. So that's why I say the business knowledge is very important if you're writing any test case, right? And now this is actually covered. Now we have to cover our second test case, which is the reset form, okay. So we have to see when is this reset form is called, okay. So whenever user clicks on this total clicks, so we have this, right. So whenever someone calls track other URL, so this will reset the form, okay. But if you want to test it in isolation, so what you can do, right, so whenever the component is calling this reset form, what happens? The short URL becomes null and is result visible becomes false. So that's what we are trying to do it here now. So what we will do, we'll also create one more test case. This will be it should reset short URL and is result visible on reset form call, okay. I think this is a very straightforward and very simple one. So you don't have to do much. You just what you have to do, you have to just call something. So I can say component dot short URL, and then this is my set. So this is an observable, so I can set it. So I'm trying to set a value. I'm just giving some random XYZ value, okay. So I'm just setting it with some fake URL, okay. This is not important. And the second thing, I'm trying to make it as true. So component dot is result visible dot set. First I made everything true, okay. So once this is true, now I'm calling my component. If I call my component dot reset form, so what this reset form does, it reset forms helps to make the changes, make it opposite. So this will change the short URL which was already set to value to null, and which was true, it will make it false, okay. So what we can expect now, if this is called, we can expect the short URL, the component dot short URL to be null, okay. And same thing we can check for the second, which is expect component dot is result visible, okay. This is a signal, so this has to be like this, to be false, okay. And now I will have a 20 test cases which are passing. Can you see? I got 20 test cases which are passing. Let's again stop the code. I don't know why it was not working, but I think so I should have to do it again. Let's see. Now let's go in the coverage, open the index.html file and click on live, and let's see how much test coverage we have for the new which we added. Yeah, so we have pages/analytics. Can you see? I got 100% coverage here as well, although it was a small component, but can you see everything is covered here, okay. So now we know also if you are doing an API call, so how do we try to write test cases for such component who is doing API calls and all, okay. So that's what I have did it over here. Now we are done with the analytics component. Now let's take a look at home component, okay. So before I start, let me first go ahead and create the spec file for it. I'll again do the rename. I copy the name there, and let's click on this and create a file name as .spec.ts. And now you know what you need to do, right? So I'll better go and copy paste few things here and then change things according to me. But again, I will highly recommend you guys to not to do this. I'm just doing this just to save some time, or else you can rather go and create it manually how I was doing it in the previous testing of that analytics component, okay. So now here I'll remove what is not required. So as I'm doing the testing for home component, so I'll copy the home component name and I'll put it over here, and let me do Control F and change it home component everywhere, okay. Also we have to import this, so quick fix and import. Now everything is up and running. So now this is right. Now let's take a look at if home component is doing some service call. So yes, I can see there is a service call done, URL service, and in this URL service, let's see what we are using. So we have HTTP client and we have app info. So we are doing something similar here as well. So let's go ahead and try to provide the required thing. So we have HTTP client is there already, which is okay. And then we also need to change it to URL service. So let's change this to URL service, okay, and save the changes, and let's keep this for now, right. And now here we have, okay, this also will change to, okay, now as we have URL service, so we'll say URL service, and this will also change to URL service, okay. Now I think this component is ready, so let's close this and rerun our coverage. So coverage will also run the test case, so that's what I'm doing. So now we have 21 spec file, which means your component is true, which means it got created successfully. Now we can start writing our test cases, okay. But again, to write a test case, we first need to identify identify what is our component and what is it actually doing. So as you can see, right, I have a call done. So this is the function which is doing shorten URL. So what it does, it takes the long URL, it checks for the if condition. If we have a long URL, it comes inside this and it does the API call, and the API call is done using the URL service, which takes a short URL, which the function name is to short the URL by taking this long URL. Okay, and if it is success, then what it does, it sets the value which it receives from the response. Okay, this is the API response what it gets, which is of type URL response, and from there it gets this short URL, and this short URL gets set it over here where we have a signal on the top. Okay, and if something went wrong, then we have a error message response, and this response gets set with the error response what you get from the backend. And also we have a console.log error, so we can also try to create one more test case which will also help you to do the console.log spy. If you remember, right, we did it previously as well. So if you want, you can do that, or else you can remove this feature for now because it's optional, to be honest. Okay, so let's go ahead and try to test this much. So to do that, let's go here in the app spec and create your test case. Okay, so I have a it, and I'll say should set short URL on successful service call. We are doing a service call, right? So that's what you can, or you can be more specific by saying the URL service shorten URL call. Okay, you can do something like that. Okay, and just go here and you know what to do now, and inside that we can start writing your test case. So first of all, if you remember, right, in the component we are getting a URL, a response from the API. So let's try to mock this. So let me first show you how this URL response look like. So if you go here, so this is how the URL response is. So we have to create something similar. So let's go here and create const mock response. Okay, this response will be of type URL response, so that we are not making any mistake. And in this, what we need a short URL which we get from the backend, and we can set it a value like HTTPS. This is any mock value you can put. We can put something like a short.at, something like that. Okay, what else your response has? It has a is success, which is coming from the backend. If it is success response, then this should be true. Status code, it should give me 200, which is again should be coming from the backend. And error message should be null because my is success is true, so there should be no error from the backend, right? And that's how I have able to mock the response. Now what we have to do, right, we have to spy, right? So as we are calling this URL this service is nothing but URL service. Now I will try to spy on this, because why? We are trying to call the service. If you remember, right, we are calling URL service dot short URL, so we have to spy on this, correct? So we will make use of spy on. Okay, what is that object? My object name is service, and in this service I have something called a short URL. I want to spy it over here. Okay, so I can do a spy, and then I can say dot and dot, we can say return, correct? So we can put it over here like, okay, what this should return. So if this service is calling short URL, then please return an observable. To create observable, we make use of off operator, off, and this off is coming from RxJS. Okay, just to be sure, coming from off. And then what you can say, you can send the mock response what you just have on the top, like whenever this service is calling short URL, please return this response. Okay, and now we can proceed further. Now what your component calls, your component is calling short URL, or like shorten the URL. So once you shorten the URL, you have to provide a mock long URL. So let me also create a const mock long URL. So suppose I have a very big URL over here, like HTTPS blah blah blah, like whatever you can put it over here, right? Like dot 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 dot. It all depends, like whatever you have. So this is just a fake response. So that's what you are trying to pass it to this shortened URL. So I can pass this as a response. I hope I'm not using it anywhere. Okay, and that's why. So yeah, that's what you pass, and this will call your function. So if you go here, so this is what I'm trying to do. I'm passing a long URL, and if there is a long URL, then this will do the service call. Okay, now let's go to the bottom and let's try to see if we can do the testing. So now we will expect. So we have to expect what? That your service is called. So your service dot short URL got called. Okay, this should be called. So to have been called once with, we are passing a value, so we have to pass the long URL. So we can say pass the mock long URL, which is this, right? So we are passing this like, okay, this was called with this mock because this method is passing it. This method passed this long URL to this, right? So that's what we are trying to check, that this URL service dot short URL is called with this long URL. Okay, so that's what I have passed it over here. So that was my first expect is. My second expect should be that expect what? Expect the component dot short URL. This should be set. So this should be to be what? This should be mock response dot short URL. Okay, and this is of type string, so you can specify it like, okay, or else it will break. Okay, nice. The second thing, your if it is success response, right, then what you can expect? You can expect your component dot error message, your error response, what you have here. Okay, we have here, so this should be null, because why? You are not setting it any value here, so this should always be null by default. Okay, so that's what you can also verify this to be null. Okay, let's do this to be null. Okay, and that's how you have added your first test cases to verify. Okay, now you can also try to add your next test case. Let's see how we can do that. So can you see now we have 22. Okay, so this test case is also getting passed. See, that's what, see, I'm trying to do things. I'm not even editing this video. I'm trying to keep it very raw, to be honest. Like, I'm just editing whatever we have pause or something, but I'm not trying to do like hide any error or any mistakes. I'm just trying to follow the process, and just by doing it, I'm able to get the correct answer. Like, everything is getting passed. Okay, now you have to also make sure that what should be your next what we say, the test case. So success is done. Okay, if you go back, if you go here, and if I go back here, and let's see if I refresh, so in the pages I should have one more, which is the home. And if I go in the home, right, so now this is getting covered. So my if block, this success block get covered. Now I have to cover this error block. Okay, so to cover that, let's see what I can do. I have to also write one more test case, correct? So let me put that one more. Let's give a name, like it should set error response on service. What was the service name? The service will call the shortened URL, right? Shorten, maybe we can copy this, successful, and then this time it will be failure. So should set error response this time. So I can copy this, paste it over here, and this should set the error message on failure URL service shortened URL call. Okay, let me correct the name as well. Okay, something like that you can do. Now over here we have to write the logic. So again, let's go back, open up this, and inside this you have to write, okay, did I made? Yeah, I made a mistake here. This should not be full, should be a. Okay, now over here you have to write the same. So now you have to mock the error. So I can say const mock error. Okay, how does your error look like? So it should have something like this error, and inside this error you can pass your error message. Okay, because I know my API response how it will throw the error and all that. So that's why I'm trying to mock my error. So mocking is important here, and I can say that invalid URL, because I'm trying to pass some null value there and all. Okay, so that's what I did first. The mocking is done there, and now I don't need to do anything for the console because I have removed that console, right? So if you remember, so now what I can do, I can just say component dot short URL, shorten the URL, and this time I can pass some wrong, maybe some wrong HTTP. I'm just trying to say this is something wrong HTTPS, whatever it is. I'm trying to pass a long URL with this. Okay, or maybe it's always better to store it as this. So const long URL, but let me copy it from the top, because anyway we are trying to return some wrong message and all that. Okay, so now I have a wrong, like, mock URL on the top, and this same I'm going to call when the component is triggered. So mock long URL, but before that, remember, you have to spy. So we have to create a spy on. What is the spy? It's going to be the completely similar, but this time make sure that you are not returning a value. Okay, because this should not return a success value. This should return an error, because now we want to test case for the error message, like when it goes to the error block. So what we can return this time, we can throw an error. So we can say throw error, and again this is coming from RxJS, throw error. And what error we want to throw? We want to throw a mock error. Okay, so this is what it will throw. And now whenever we'll call this component, what you can expect now? So first of all, you can expect something similar, like this should be called with the long URL. Okay, so you can expect the first thing, which is going to be the same. Second thing, what you can expect, that the error response was set. So what I can do, I can again copy this. Okay, I can put it over here, and this will be reverse of that. So now we are not checking short URL, but we are checking this error response, and this error response will be what? This will be equal to your mock. No, this should be the error. Okay, mock error dot error. Okay, and this is nothing but your URL response, right? And in the URL response you also have error. Okay, if you go here, right, so you can see you have an error message. Okay, that's what we want to use now. Okay, so that's what I try to set it with that, and now your error response will be null, right? So it should not be null. Maybe we can check that to be okay. That is already been tested on the top. drop. Oh, so sorry, I was trying to repeat myself. So this should be removed now, but yeah, that's it. Maybe that's it. You can put it for this, and now you can try to test it. So let me just close this and run the coverage again, and let's see if everything is pass or not. Can you see everything is pass? And in the home component I also have this should set error message on failure. Okay, and now that is able to do it over here as well, and that's how I can say that I have also written the test case for my home component. And now let's take a look at the coverage. So now it should be 100%. Yeah, it is 100 for home component as well. Let's go back to the all files, and I can see analytics and home has 100% code coverage. Okay, now here I can see that there are a few components which I was missed. Okay, because we are not doing this right, the URL result, and that's why it was in red color. Okay, so I have skipped it for now, but maybe I will do it later part of this video, because that's not important, because it's doing the repetitive things what I have already did in the previous component. Okay, now let's take a look at our next component. So this is also done, analytic done, home done. Now we have a URL. Okay, and in this URL component, let's see what we have. So we are importing the table component here, and oh nice, this will be a very tricky one because we have a lot of properties here. We have methods called next page, previous page, and we also have this get page URL call, which is doing the URL service call and all that. So this is an interesting one, so I would highly recommend you guys to take a look at this one, and maybe you can let me know if you have any doubt related to this topic, right? You can mention them in the comment. You can give the timestamp to me that, hey Shashi, at this point of time I was not able to understand. So based on that timestamp, I will take a look and I'll try to explain you in the comment itself, or else you can connect with me over the Discord server or Telegram, whatever you feel comfortable with. Okay, so let's go ahead and try to create a spec file for this as well. So again, I'll do the same format, rename this and create the file name with .spec.ts. okay, and now what you can do something similar what you have did it on the home. So I'll copy something same and go over here and paste it. Now what I have to do, I have to change everything which is home to URL component. So I'll go here, I'll search for home component and change everything to URL to this. So not required anymore, call this import. Okay, so this is not required, so I can remove. Okay, let's save everything and let's see what else is not required. So this is not required, this is not required, so we can remove. Okay, let's save this and I can still see 23. Okay, it's fine, because yeah, let's see what else requirement we have for this particular component. So if I go in the URL component, what it does, it has an import of this. It is injecting any service. Yes, it is injecting this URL service. Okay, so I think I can keep everything similar to what I had for home comp. Okay, let's try to run this coverage and let's see if the test case is getting passed. So it should have 24 test case now. Yeah, so I have 24 test cases, which means that your URL component also got successfully created. See, which means now we are able to follow everything what we have did till now, and we are able to get everything correct. Okay, now we have to see, right, like what is this component doing first, and we will have to identify how many test cases are required. Okay, the first test case is already there. If you see that, it should create the component. Let's take a look at what do we require next. So now if I see this component, right, when on ng on in it, I'm calling a get paged URL. Okay, and this get page URL is doing a API call to get paged URL, which is helping me to set all the values of the table data. So it sets the value of like table data, it sets the current page, total page, has previous page and has next page. So we have to do a lot for this. And when this happens, when the page is reloaded. Okay, whenever we the ng on init lifecycle hook calls, right, we have to do all that thing. So let's create a test file for that. We'll say not test file but test case. So it should initialize the default, it should initialize the values and call get paged URL on ng on init. Correct, something like that. Should initialize the values and call get paged URL on ng on init. Okay, or I can say that should call get paged URL on ng on init and set the values, something like that. This is more accurate. Okay, and now I can start writing the test case for it. Okay, so now if I take a look here again, that whenever this ng on init is called, this should call this particular function which is in the bottom. So that I have to test. And one more thing, right, when the page reloads, right, I want to see all these values are set. Okay, all these values are set by default. Okay, so that what I can try to check it over here. Okay, so to do that, right, first what you will do, you'll first create a spy on. Let's try to spy on your component. So this time I'm spying on the component, and this component has a value called as get paged URL, which means that this will take a look at this guy guy, and what this guy should do, we can check that just in the bottom. So now what I'm doing, I'm saying component dot ng on init. So I'm trying to call the ng on init once. So what this should do, if the ng on init is called, so make sure that this method was called. So we can try to put a expect. Okay, we can expect that component dot get current page URL to have been called. Okay, to have been called times, how many times it should be called? One time, right? When the ng on init loads, how many times this is called? This is called only one time, so that we can verify. So save the changes. So this is our first expect. So let's try to add some more expects, which should be expect component dot. Okay, what I'll do, right, I'll better copy everything here and okay, like this, and put it over here so that I'm able to write the expect directly here. So let me comment this. I hope now you know what I'm trying to do. So now what I'll do, I'll first try to do dot current page, which is a signal. So you know, right, whenever the ng on it loads, so it will set all the values. So what it should set to, it will set the signal value to be 1, so that I can verify. Second, I can put a expect. Again, I can put a component dot items per page. Again, this is a signal. This should match with to be how much? This should to be 8. Yes or no? Let me also try to do it for others as well. I'll copy paste. Okay, now this will call what? Total pages, and the total pages will be by default 1. Then we have has previous, has next. This should be false, and we have has, what is, okay, previous page. This also to be false. So I should not use to be, or I can directly say to be false direct. Okay, so no need of this. Can also be to be false. You can check it directly without passing the value. Okay, save the changes, and I can remove this. So now this is our first test case, that when the component loads, I'm able to expect all of them. Okay, if you change anything, right, so just to be sure that things are breaking, if I save it, can you see one test case got failed? Okay, just to show you that okay, this is running fine. Now I have to test some other. So let's try to see some other test case scenarios where I have to check that if it is not called, then the previous page is called. Like for example, okay, let's try to first analyze here, and then maybe we can try to add it there. Okay, now so here I have a previous page method call. So suppose I'm calling this component dot previous page. So what will happen, right? If my current page value is greater than 1, then only it will call my get paged URL. Correct? So this is what test case I can write. So that's what I was trying to mention. So here I will say should call get paged URL when previous page is called and your current page should be greater than 1. Okay, if it is greater than 1, then it should call, right? And then you can write your test case inside this, like, okay. So what you can do here, you can again say spy on where you want to spy. I want to spy on the component, and I want to spy on this method. Okay, what is the method? I want to spy on this get page URL. So you pass the directly class, and you can object, and you can say whatever the methods this class has, you can get access to it over here. Okay, so spy on this, and now what I will do, I will try to set the value of the signal. So I'll say component dot current page dot set. I want to set this value to 2, which is greater than 1. Yes or no? If this is greater than 1, and I'm calling the component dot previous page, if this previous page is called, which means what will happen? Which means we can expect that your component dot get paged URL to have been called, right? To have been called. Maybe we can also put time, or you can just say to have been called. Okay, so this will be called 1 if it is greater than 1. And if I save the changes, I'm expecting the test case got passed, and again I got 26 test case which is passed. Okay, and now what we will do, we'll try to copy the same test case, because now we have to write it like this. So should not call. So now it should not call. It should not call get page URL of the previous page when the previous page is called and the current page is equal, like the current page is equal to 1 or is 1, because the condition was, right, if the current page, if this current page, can you see, right, if it is equal to 1, which means this will never come in this loop. Yes or no? And if it doesn't come, then what will happen? This page result will never be called. So that's what you can expect now. Okay, so let's go and try to do that. So now over here we will set the current page to 1, and we will call the component dot previous page, and now we have to expect. So we already have a spy here, now we have to expect. So how we can do that? We can say that dot, and then we can say not. Okay, expect not dot to have been called, which means we can verify that if the page current page is 1, If the current page is 1, then it will never come to this loop and this page will not get called. Okay, so that's what I have added that test case, and can you see again it got passed and we get 27 success. Okay, now we have to write the condition for this one, next page. So what is the condition? If the current page is less than total page, then it is called. Okay, so let's try to add that. Okay, let's try to add that it again. Maybe I can copy paste and I can just change the description and do something similar. So I can say that should call the get page URL when next page and the current page is, or you can say the current page should be less than total pages. Okay, that's what the condition is, right? So if the condition meets, then it should be called. So what we will do here, we will try to set few things. So the current page is 1, for example, and we can say component dot total pages dot set the total pages are 4, which is greater, right? So which means 1 is greater than 4, and I'm calling next page. So this will be called, right? So we can expect that this page URL got called, okay, to have been called. So that's what I hope this is like easy to understand. This is just the reverse of that, because we have to make sure that all the test case scenarios are passed. And can you see this is also got passed? Okay, now again I can copy this and I can just do the reverse. Maybe I should have copied this one, and we have to do something different. This, so now should not call. So this should not call page when the next page is called when the current page is, okay, so now you have to be very much tricky here. Okay, if the current page is equal to total page, which means you should not do next. Okay, for example, if I go on the browser, if I try to click on next, because my current page is 1 and my last total page is also 1, so I cannot do next. See, I'm not able to do next. So that's what I want to test here. Okay, so if current page is equal to total page, what is the expectation? So I'll make it as current page to 4 and the total page also to 4, and if I call next page, what should happen? Will it call this page? No, right? So what I have to do, I have to copy this and I will put a expect as that this get page URL is not have been called. Okay, so this will not be called if this meets this scenario. If I save the changes, you can see now we have 29 test cases which got passed. Okay, and if you see the magic, right, if I go here in the code coverage, if I refresh this, so I don't know which was it, I think it's URL, I guess, if I'm not wrong. Yes, the URL. And can you see now I'm able to test the previous page, I'm also able to test the next page. Now what I want to test, I want to test this get page URL which is pending, and that's why we still have like 76% statement covered. Okay, let's try to add our next one. So to add the next one, let's first try to identify what should be our individual test name. So it should set, okay, so let's see what it does. So if everything is success, then it should set all this value, right? So to set this value, I have a result, and this result is of type page result. Okay, so let's go in this page URL, and I have a page URL. So can you see I have to create a type, something like this. Okay, so let's go and try to mock it first. So we have to mock, we have to give a name. So we have to give a name should set, okay, let's try to make it simple. Should set response of the API on get paged URL. Okay, something like that. On get page. I'm trying to keep it very simple. I don't want to write a whole, but yeah, let's try to make it very simple and let's try to focus on the test. Okay, now what we have to do first, we have to mock. So let's try to mock it. We can say const mock paged result. This is of type paged result. Okay, paged result of what? Page result of your URL. So this is your URL. Okay, and now you can just open up this bracket like this and you can start writing it. So first of all, we should have a data, and data is nothing but an array. So inside that, what you can expect in the data, you will have an ID. Again, this is coming from the API backend. So you will have a short URL, which is HTTPS. You can put short URL. Okay, and same thing, you can put it over here as a long URL, because that's what you get from the backend, because you want to fill in the table value. So this will be HTTP long URL. You can put any value. This is just mocking. Okay, and there is one more thing which is present, that is created at when this got created. So you can put it like this. So this should be of type string. So toDate string. Okay, ISO string should also. Okay, so now we have a data ready, and there are some other values as well, like page index. You can just put it like that. You have a total count. Okay, so total count should be maybe there are total 24. Okay, I'm just trying to put it like that. And there are total pages. Total pages are 3. So has next page? Yes, it should have a next page. Has previous page? This should be false, because once you start the page, right, the first one is always false and the next one is always true, right? And then something has page size. What is the page size? So let's make it as 3, and can you see now everything is got success. Okay, so our mock response is ready. Now I hope this is making sense, because once you have a mock response, then only you can return some value. So I have to spy first. Spy on what? Spy on the URL service what I have created on the top. See this URL service. Okay, spy on this. So this has a method called as get. So whenever this is calling get paged URL, okay, you have to return. So I can say and dot return value. So we have to return a value that should be an observable of what? Of paged result, which you just have mocked on the top, right? Okay, and then what you will do, you'll just call component dot get paged URL. So if I call this, so what is your expectation? You will expect something like this. Okay, so let me put it directly because I have it ready with me, because I don't want to waste your time like writing everything. So this is what your expectation should be, and this will all change to this mock. So let me copy this, Control F, and this will all change to mock page response. Okay, and now can you see, right, what will happen? There's something which is failing. Okay, I think I have changed this as well, so let me remove this. So as this was page result, so that also changed that. Okay, let me go and change this as well, right, and then quick fix. Okay, I'm so sorry guys for that problem. Okay, let's save everything and let's see what's still wrong. Okay, so this will change to this mock. So let me remove this mock. Yeah, and this should be okay. Okay, right, so that's what I was expecting. Now I can see my 30 test cases are passed. Okay, so that's what I have did. So what I have did, so whenever I call the component, so what I'm trying to see, that whatever data I got from the component will all get matched with this mock response, which is returned by this API. Okay, so in testing, right, that's what we say, that mocking is very important. You mock your response and you try to compare it with your actual value, what you have in the component, and that's what I'm trying to expect. So expecting this thing to match with this mock data, expecting the current page to mock with the page index, total page should be this, previous page should be this, and next page should be this. Okay, and that's how you try to write the unit test cases. Okay, and now if I go back to the code coverage, if I refresh this, so can you see now this line also got covered, and now I'm expecting this to be 100%. Oh, it's still not 100%. Oh, it is 100%. I think I have to refresh it, that's why. So if I refresh, this becomes 100% as well. Okay, if I go to all file, now I have analytics, home, and URL, which is at 100%. Okay, now let's take a look at the last one. I guess this is the last one, and oh, this is the easiest one. I think it don't have anything, so this has no function written, so I think we can skip this one. No test case is required here, and in that way I can say that we are successfully able to complete the Angular unit testing. I know this series, this course, you can say this was a very crash course kind of thing, where I was trying to demonstrate for one of my application, okay, which I have created, and I wanted to demonstrate like how I will be writing test cases for my current application. Okay, now if you want me to cover this services as well, then do let me know in the comment section. If I get about 10 to 15 comments, okay, like yes, we need a video for this services as well, so I will do that. I will definitely gonna cover that in the next part, where I will cover this analytics service and URL service. Okay, like how do we write unit test for the Angular services. Okay, and also if you like this video, then please give it a thumbs up, because that will really help me to get motivated and bring up with such kind of a course. Okay, again, let's try to put it as a goal. So if I get 100 likes for this video, so what I can do, I will create a crash course for Angular 18 version. So whatever the latest version we have right now, so I will try to create a crash course for Angular, where it will help you guys to understand what has changed in Angular, and that too from beginner to advanced level. Okay, so let's try to keep that goal as well. Okay, so that, and how you can achieve the goal, the only option is by sharing this video. If you share this video with others, if I get 100 likes, then I will gonna definitely create that Angular crash course for you. Like it may be going to be 3 to 4 hours of video, but that's fine. I'll try to publish that so that you guys can learn Angular in a very better way. The way I'll teach, I think it will be different than what others are actually teaching on YouTube. So that I can definitely promise. So if you have watched till here, then I would just say, wow, like what a journey you guys had it with me. Like you have made it to the end of our Angular unit testing crash course. And I hope you are feeling more confident and ready to tackle the unit testing in your Angular projects. So we have covered a lot of grounds, from basics of Jasmine and testbed setup to the advanced topic like testing components, input, output, the lifecycle hooks, and the other handling asynchronous operation, right? Whatever we have just saw with the services. So please always remember that testing is not just about finding bugs. It's about building confidence in your code. Okay, by writing tests, you ensure that your application behave as expected, making them more reliable and easier to maintain in the long run. Okay, so always make a note of this. And if you ask me any tip for it, then all I can say that keep practicing. The more you write tests, the more natural it will will become. Okay, try applying whatever you have learned today to your own projects. Okay, start small, like test those component services and all that. So in this way you will try to build your confidence. And also, if you have found this course helpful, then don't forget to like that video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on new content whenever I upload. And also make sure to check out the links in the description for more resources and advanced topic that you can explore next. And finally, like, I would love to hear from you all that, so please drop a comment below about what you found most helpful and what would you like me to see in the future videos. Like, your feedback is really gonna help me to create better content for you and our community of developers. Alright, so thank you so much for joining me on this Angular unit testing journey. So I'm Shashi. As always, happy coding guys, and keep testing. See you guys in the next video.